Well, good morning or good evening, and we'll get started. My name's John Newquist, and I've been doing certification training for over 20 plus years. And I work with the BCSP study group that you see up here. And we're going to talk about ASP11, the key changes. You know, I thought it wasn't that many. And then you read the blueprint, which is at bcsp.org, and it's got a lot of new stuff in it and some of the emphasis. So when they emphasize the topic that might be previously there, like chemistry, then I added a chemistry question because I think it's important. The passing score is a 94. It seems low, but we have a lot of people having to take the test and walk into the Pearson View Center and, you know, no computer with you and 200 questions and 4.5 hours to do it in and 5 hours or so, and it's 50 plus different topics. And for a lot of people, like I said, this is going to have 60 knowledge checks, a record. And the reason we put it, I work with other people on making this thing, and we just found out there's just a lot of information as far as the topics. And let's get into it here. We record it, and I'll put it up on YouTube and everything else. And when we do the knowledge checks, you just type your answer in the chat, and we'll have people, like I said, hopefully come in later on. But doesn't matter. You're going to see it on YouTube, and again, we look at the domain. They came out about a month ago, and they said, okay, here's the area we're going to do. It's still 9 domains, but you can see a big shift in the domain 2, and we'll talk about it by domain. And then the ethics questions got removed. So for most people, I tell people I think it's going to be harder because a lot of people who would get 5, 6 ethics questions would get all of them right. And now you've got 6 of these knowledge check type of questions. You have to remember the data bank is over 10,000 questions. So when we have the, risk management or safety management or incident investigation or emergency response, they draw from those question banks for all 8 tests. So that's one of the things, having taken all 8 examinations by BCSP, I started realizing I would see some of the same questions from a CSP to an OSHT, from a CHST to a ASP type of thing. And that could happen. But your odds of getting a question, if you took this before, are about 5%. You might get 3 or 4 of your old test questions because the data bank's so big. So a lot of terminology, some new programs, and we're going to go into it. Let's get your calculator out, because the first one, you can see, this is going to be 10% of the questions. Number 2, 25. So 200 questions, that means 10 math questions, or 10% could be 20 math and science questions, and then we get into domain 250. That's a big chunk. So these other ones kind of went down a little bit, but domain 1 and 2 we're going to spend a lot of time on. We got 90 minutes to do this in, and we'll go through it. So they want to go from like knowing molecular weight to practical safety calculations. So they're trying to tie these into real life safety things instead of you just having to know. And it's good. Some of the questions went like chemistry and radiation to domain 6, which is good because domain 2 would have been even larger. The NIOSH lifting equation, we'll talk about it. One of the things that we see in the test and all these knowledge questions, we write them. We don't use the actual exam questions because we made it, we told BCSP we will never use your exact ones, because I know it's copyrighted. And so, but we focus on the topic. So when we talk about a question on the NIOSH lifting equation, we're going to talk about the elements for that. And it doesn't really matter if it's the same. If you know that concept, you read about it in the Yates book, and you go through this, then you'll understand a little bit. Some other issues like probability of failure was on the CSP. Now they pushed it also in the ASP. Financial indicators we'll get into, which is, they always want you to know the value of safety or safety pays and the cost-benefit ratios. Radiation is just never going away. You're going to have to know radiation. And then union conversion is they want you to be able to convert from standard to the metric system. So a lot of people, particularly those that have never used metric, it's a challenge. and some other ones we'll talk about. So let's get into the tough one. You know, the first domain is a lot of math and science, and for most people it's there. Remember, it's only 10% of the questions. You're probably only going to have to use a calculator maybe 5 to 10 times, and the other 10 would be science related, you know, safety principles and things like this. So one of the things they don't make you do is the NIOSH formula. We're getting test questions asking about the formula, what each of the components are, but not actually having to calculate it, which is good. So when we're going to lift an object, we have to figure out where we're going to start. So if it starts over here and we're going to put it over here, they're going to call the horizontal movement. The vertical movement is the area. We're going to lift it from the floor up onto this table. So that many inches would be the vertical movement. The distance moved vertically would be this issue here. If he's just picking it off this conveyor, that's going to be an issue. The coupling factor is how good is the grip, and that's just a kind of like your opinion of what the grip is. And then, are you bending and twisting, which definitely is the worst thing you can do in ergonomics. And then, how often are you doing this in a 10-minute period, 15-minute period? So they go out and they'll ask you about this. You won't have to calculate this part. They may give you the weight of the object and the recommended weight limit and ask what the lifting index, or vice versa. You know, they might go over, here's the lifting index, here's the recommended weight limit, what could be the weight lifted, you know, that's safely. So let's get into some of the typical questions that you could run into. The worker's lifting a box of 40 pounds from a height of 10 inches off the floor, places it on a cart 24 inches away, kind of like this. This is what the order pickers do at the warehouses. The box has good hand-to-object coupling. The task is done less than once a minute, which sounds, you know, like it's not really fast, except that you're walking to the next place. You know, it's like you pick up this box, you walk another, you know, 100 meters to another place. So what factor would reduce these recommended weight limit? The horizontal distance of body, the vertical travel distance, the load frequency, or good hand-object coupling? This is a tough question, so let's type the answer in chat, and when we get about 3 people answer, we'll go on. And it is the horizontal distance of the body. You know, you can lift 50 pounds, you know, 51 if you want to be exact, in the NIOSH lifting, from your knees to your shoulder. That's our perfect thing. Bring it to your core of the body. But if you're out here outstretched like that, you can't lift that much. So if you're going to say he's maybe 15 inches, he can maybe only lift 30 pounds. If I'm 20 inches away, I'm down to 26. This is a chart I worked with a couple big companies with, and this makes it easier for everybody. You don't have to do any math. You just look at it, and you know. And I tell people, it's on the floor, 20 pounds max. It's between your knees and shoulder. Bring it to your core, 50 pounds. No twisting. You know, excellent job. The NIOSH lifting equation. You're watching a worker lift 30-pound item from floor level, twist 90 degrees to place it on a conveyor belt. They repeat this every 30 seconds. What modification would have the greatest positive impact on reducing the lifting index? Instruct the worker to twist their torso instead of moving their feet. Reduce the load weight to 25 pounds. Raise the origin height to waist level. Increase the frequency of lifts. Wow, everybody got that one. Raise the origin height, waist level. Very good. And you know, this is using the principles of NIOSH factors and stuff. And then probability of failure, you're going to get that in the CSP also. A lot of people have never dealt with this in their life, but it's just a failure rate in 10,000 operations. So what's the probability of failure? And everything is in terms of 100. You know, so if you're going to use 10,000, you got to figure out what the rate would be in 100. It is B, because 2 failures divided by 10,000 operations is 0.002, which is all we're going to do is just divide this out, and it's going to be put in percentage and stuff. So that's a low percentage, you know. But when you're doing objects like robots or hydraulic cylinders, they want it even higher than that, 1 out of 100,000. And that's where you get into the levels of like 6 sigma. How many standard deviations do you want before there could be a possible failure? If you're going to do a rocket to a space station or the moon, you got to have even better than that, because you can't have a part fail. You have to make sure everything is precise. Again, financial cost benefit, this is in every test now, and how they phrase it is going to be a little bit different. But you know, a lot of this you can just kind of look at it and kind of figure it out without even doing the calculation. And you're going to put a new machine guard costing $10,000. You're just going to put interlock guards all around the robot, and the saving from injuries, because you've had injuries, would be $4,000 a year. What's the payback period for this investment? This is, I'm going to show you the way that most people do it, and then you could always do a math formula. But it is just a simple math question. Okay. Very good. 2.5 years. You could have just taken 10,000 divided by 4,000 and you got 2.5. Or I'm not that person. I just think, okay, in the first year we save 4,000, the second year we save 8,000, third year we saved, if we went to the full year, we would save 12,000. But they wanted to know for a 10,000, so it's just half a year, and that's how I would do it. So you can always use that logic, and if you get something in there, it's tough, because a lot of times people just freeze at this question, and they just like, oh, I don't know what it means by payback period, and all it is like you're going to spend something to get something. And if you do anything with investing and stuff and paying dividends, that's kind of what you're getting. Okay, another one. We're going to invest $50,000 in a training program. Like, they're going to bring in and do a confined space training program all across this big corporation. So, if you got a little company of 50 people, you're not going to spend 50. You might be spending 5,000. But it prevents 75,000 in injuries. Wait a minute. We spent 50,000 and we're going to save 75,000 that year? Wow. Now this is where they're going to give you the formula you hope. The return on investment is the gain minus the cost divided by the cost times 100. Don't overthink this. Just put the numbers in the formula. That's where people make the mistake. And they sit there and they think, well, wait a minute. Why isn't it, more than it? Why isn't it 120, 150%? Just put the number in the formula. That's all you have to remember. And if you do this, you're going to have 75,000 minus 50,000 divided by 50,000 times 100 is 50%. Okay, that's the return on investment. A little bit different from cost benefit. If you take the S&P or you take a lot of these other tests, this is what you got. Those are the two questions you got to be able to master. And at least usually with the return on investment, you get the formula. But you should try to remember it, because who's to say that the formula doesn't appear in November? I mean, they could just make that subtle change, and all of a sudden somebody's going to miss a question because they don't remember it. Always going to get radiation on the ASP. It could be 1, 2, or 3 questions, and that's that randomness. They're going to pull questions out of this domain one, and you could get, you'd never usually get none, but usually get one. But there are people, like I said, having done over a couple thousand people getting certified, it's could be different. So this is a little bit different. They're going to tell you how much rems or millirems you could get in an hour. So you're getting 8 millirems in an hour, and if you step back from 4 meters, you're at 2 meters from the radiation source, you're back to 4 meters. You just doubled your distance. What's the new exposure law? Well, that right off the bat, there's a thing called the inverse square law, and you got to know how to do that. This one, they're not going to give you the formula, and sometimes they give you the formula. It depends how old that question is in the data bank. You just, once you remember it, you'll see it, but you do have to remember this one, because a lot of tests, I mean, when I took the OSHT, I had one question that didn't have the formula, the second question didn't have it. It's like, but you remember it. Let's take a look at it. So the inverse square law is that it's inversely proportional to the square of distance. So 2 feet, the distance is, the ratio is 2, the square of 2 is 4, or 1/4. We're going to get 1/4 of the dose We're getting 8 at 2, 1/4 the dose by just backing up another 2 feet or doubling the distance. So it's going to be 2 milligrams. Very good, Marta, you got that. And that's a tough question. It's nice if they give you the formula, but then you have to put the numbers in. And just you have to remember, if I back, I got to figure out, am I going back double? Then I square it. It's going to be 4 times benefit. And that's a question you have to be able to go do. Radiographer is going to use gamma source. This is some of the things we're seeing in the practice questions. And I call them practice questions because these are topics that we haven't seen before in the last 10 years. And they're starting to put these kind of questions in here. And it's not common. You may not get this type of question. It could be an inverse square law, the effects of radiation, that kind of thing. But they're using a gamma source, like a eddy current machine that's going to be measuring thickness of a vessel or seeing if there's defects in a pressure vessel. The current dose rate is 16 milligrams. That's your dose. That's all you have to remember. The 2-inch thick lead barrier is going to provide half the value. That means it's going to cut it in half. What's the new dose rate? Once you understand what this means, all it is going to cut the rate in half. So what do you think the answer is? It's going to be 8. That's all it is. The thickness of the barrier is 2 inches. The half value life is going to be cut it in half. So you take the dose rate, cut it in half, and that's it. They may talk about it provides 10 half value levers. Then you would have 10 times 2, and then it would be an area. So it's just kind of, an odd question, and hopefully you won't get a question like that. But all it is that when they put a shielding, it's going to give you a half value layer of it. And for example, I was at a laboratory that was under secret stuff. They had 12-inch thick lead walls. So every 2 inches is going to reduce half the value. This would be 6 levels of half. So it would reduce it to 8 millirems at 2 inches, 4 millirems at 4 inches, and so on till you get to the 12-inch line. I was asking them, what are you going to be doing in this room? It's a huge room. It's about to be 10 meters by 10 meters by 20 meters with a 3-4 meter ceiling. And they says, you don't have any need to know about this room. They had a 3,000-pound lead door. But that's the principle. Somebody did this math to determine how thick that door needs to be with the radiation that we're doing in this room. So that it's a real practical question. Okay, we get concentrations. Now we got to go to convert ppm to percentages. This is easy if you can do it, and I've done it forever, so I can kind of look at it and know. But a lot of people, this is brand new, and they will not give you the formula. You're expected to know how to do this. Well, look at it. Everybody got it right off the bat. So you do ppm, just divide by 10,000. 1%. All you got to remember, 100% is 1 million parts per million. 1% is 10,000. And then you kind of go down and you could go through, okay, 1%. 1,000 is 0.1. 100 is 0.01%. So that's all it is, 0.5. Excellent job. And again, people who are overseas have a tremendous advantage because they tend to use this a little bit more than the United States. So we're going to get this injection pen, and they're going to inject 250 micrograms. That's what it says here, 250 micrograms. What's the amount in grams? This is a term between milligrams and micrograms. You do have to know that difference because the silica standard, the lead standard, and hexavalent chrome are in micrograms. And it is A. Very good. And again, one of the things you can do, when we post it on YouTube, is that you can take screenshots of this, and then you can use them kind of like flashcards, or you can just put it in and copy the text and put it on a document. Okay, now we have something. This is easy for everybody overseas. You got a packet that weighs 50 kilograms. What's the weight in pounds? For most people here, we never have to convert it to pounds. So people overseas can get this really easy, and it's just because they use the metric unit. And if you're a weightlifter, you know this. One of the things I find out, a guy right out of high school, or a woman out of high school, they know, because sometimes the weights come in kilograms. So it is indeed A. You just multiply 2.2. You're expected to remember that conversion. And the reason we go through this is it's just an easy question for a lot of people, but if you don't do this and you don't expect it, then you're like, I can't remember what it is, and now you're just guessing, which is not what you want to be. These are what I call nice questions toward your score of getting in 94. And then lockout is going to change a little bit. They call it, it's going to be called hazardous energy control systems. They want to talk about how to implement versus actually knowing the actual standard. Now, you're going to get questions of it, but they're more about how you're going to implement the lockout program. So, again, safety management is going to be a chunk of it. Remember, this is 50 questions on safety management. And then they're going to add electrical questions, incident investigation, how to facilitate, new tech, and everything else. So this is kind of like safety management plus other things. So for a lot of people, this is going to be a tough area. And if you're not expecting questions on drones and AI, which we're seeing on the practice questions, then you could say, wow. Plus, they expanded the hazards. That means you're going to get more questions on PPE, confined space, process safety, driver safety, compressed gas, pressure vessels, slip, trips, and falls. So we're going to have a question on it because it's pretty likely you're going to get a question. So one of the things when we do these brand new modules or these brand new PowerPoints and sessions, we put in new knowledge checks so that you get some idea what the new stuff is going to look like. And for some people, if you know confined space or PPE, these are easy. They're like, John, I can get all 10 of them. They're not a big deal. That's great. That's what you want to have. Because remember, you're going to have to transfer a lot of this to the CSP. So ISO 4000, everybody's getting literally 5 ISO questions on ASP, which is stunning people. And you got to know the different ISOs. There's a whole module on ISOs and stuff in the file tab of the BCSP. So you want ISO 45000. During the gap audit, that means you're trying to see what the gap is from the workers to the mid-managers to the senior executives. And it's discovered that the workers are not being included in hazard identification or risk assessment activities. According to the ISO standard for safety, 45001, what principle is being violated? Continual improvement, B, hierarchy of controls, C, worker participation, D, legal compliance. Okay, very good. It is C. And here we are. We're doing a hazard assessment or job brief before we start working. And this is very popular in Chicago in construction. They have the morning brief. They talk about these are the hazards that we expect. These are the solutions that we're going to work. Every day we're going to wear, safety equipment. Today would be a Class 2 helmet, vest, safety shoes, safety glasses, cut-resistant gloves. And you talk about it because we're trying to minimize the accident. That means you look at what we got to do today and what are the hazards. If we're going to dig an area, we have the road construction. We want to put some signs. We want a cave-in protection. We got to check for utilities. We have to deal with, the area of the people wanting to watch the work and getting hurt while coming too close. Backup alarms on our skid steer. These are 5 easy hazards that could be done on an assessment and how you're going to control them. So it is work position. And again, ISO active involvement of the workers in the program, and then continuous improvement of the safety program. ANSI Z10. Now, the ANSI Z10 came up with a new hierarchy control. We're not going to cover that in the test, but you are going to get 5 questions on hierarchy control, and they're going to ask you, which is the best solution. And hopefully, one of the things, Cameron Zamos said, a lot of these times with the newer questions, there's going to be 2 easy ones to throw out. They're not going to be even close. And then there's 2 tougher ones you have to pick, and sometimes you just have to kind of go by that priority. We're revising the system. We want to address hazards before they result. The big thing in safety management is always assess the hazard first. It doesn't matter what you think is, should be done later. It means every time you look at a hazard, somebody's lifting wrong, a machine is not guarded, you assess the hazard. You may assess the hazard in 3 seconds, but that is always the first step in hazard assessment. So what reflects the proactive approach? Performing root cause analysis after every incident. B, waiting for OSHA inspections to dictate improvement. C, conducting pre-task risk assessments and job hazard analysis. D, installing cameras to monitor behavior. And everybody's got it right at C. Here's what we call a heat index. When I worked with Ford, you know, one of the things that we, and this is done, you know, by some of the top consultants too, we went through all the injuries they had globally. And what I found in a typical year, when you had the cars moving on a monorail hoist all around through the facility, people would get hit by this carrier. And the severity was, you know, we ranked the severity 1 to, you know, 10. I mean, you know, 1 to 6. You know, high severity, medium severity, low severity, high probability, and you know, people got caught between it. That was the number one thing, and then, you know, that's something they didn't even think about. And then, to my surprise, when you got the new vehicle coming out, they're going to start it up, and people got hit. So when I work with like Toyota and other companies, the first thing they did when they saw data like this, they said, you know what, we're going to make sure that nobody's going to be in front of it. We've got a whole area that can stop the vehicle just in case, so they're not going to run into a wall, because sometimes you start it up and you hit the brakes, it doesn't work, and then you hit somebody. So it's kind of another way to look at it, but you're right, C is the answer. Number 12, understanding safety management system for development of program. The company's building a safety program based on safety management systems. What's the first step? Write the safety policy. B, train the workers. C, identify organizational context and interested parties. D, create an emergency response plan. A little tougher because you're looking for the word assessment, and they didn't give you to this one. It is right. It is C. And one of the things that, you know, we're looking at is that sometimes you don't get buy-in, and we're going to go through it. This is a punch press with two-hand controls. You know, part of the assessment is we don't need to wait for it to have an accident. We want to sit there and get all the people involved, and we want to sit there and try to identify their parties who are going to be interested in it. So the idea is that it's going to be tailored to their needs, and hopefully they're going to be very interested in trying to, you know, deal with the safety issues by the highest priority. It's tough when they have no losses in 20, 30 years, and you want to spend money to prevent, to them, no losses. But you need to show data that shows that this is an issue. And, you know, like I said, it's important. So, again, we want to get the people who are stakeholders, which would be, if I look at our example before, it would be the people in the area of machining or the production cell, the top managers involved, because we're going to spend it. They have to do it. The financial people may be involved. And then we're going to develop the safety policies and, you know, go through the rest of the programs. Implementing a hazardous energy control program, or I'm just going to say lockout. I don't like to use tagout because tagout's not used too often. The safety auditor discovers some procedures are missing specific isolation steps. What's the most appropriate action to ensure compliance? So if we take a look at our photo, they have the pneumatic. It says turn it to closed position, and in the procedures, it's in the open position. A new employee is just going to follow the photo and just do it wrong. So this is a position that you find a procedure is missing a specific step. It's not isolating it. Do you note the deficiencies for future program updates and continuing using the procedure? B, direct employee to use similar equipment procedures as a temporary walk around. C, revise and update the energy control procedures to include specific isolation steps. D, temporarily allow operations with a supervisor oversight while rewriting the procedures. Yes, very true. Very true. A lot of topics on the S&P. Remember, the S&P is like the CSP, except for a few questions on the math are gone. A lot more risk, a lot more safety management. Again, the answer is C, revise the energy control procedures to include specific isolation steps, and that's what OSHA standards require. Emerging technology, well, we got a couple of them. A company outfits its worker with wearable sensors that detect fatigue and body temperature. One worker receives repeated alerts that they say they feel fine, because you're gonna get a notification. How should the safety team adequately respond? Here in the photo is a heat sensor. You know, Epicor makes these sensors. It looks like a little bitty, a little armband type of thing you put on your. This is his arm, his bicep, and you can see his forearm. and it gives you the readings of what their body temperature and everything else. This is, you know, the future. They're going to monitor how you feel. How much sleep did you get? A, ignore the alert until the worker complains. B, remove the wearable device from the user. C, use the alert as a proactive signal and assess the worker's condition. D, discipline the worker for unsafe duty. Here we have 3 bad answers and 1 correct one, so everybody got it right. Use the alert as proactive signal and assess the worker's condition. And again, going to be popular. It's not out there. It's very expensive right now, but you know, companies that have high value employees, that's something you might want to do if you're going to be out there, because what do you do with somebody who has 20 years experience, knows how to do everything, and they die from heat stroke? You're not going to replace that person. You know, particularly in the Middle East, India, and some of the northern Australia, some of the temperatures are exceptionally hot, exceptionally hot. You know, 50 centigrade. You know, that's a little bit different than, you know, my 29 today. 15, emergency technology. So large manufacturers are going to use AI-driven software. AI means artificial intelligence, to analyze near-miss reports, maintenance logs, and production data to predict where incidents are likely to occur. What's a key benefit of this technology? A, it eliminates the need for safety audits. B, it guarantees 0 incidents if used properly. C, it allows predictive intervention before incidents occur. D, it replaces the need for an experienced safety professional. And again, everybody got it. So here's an example of something Voxel AI does, is they have cameras at the facility, and here we have a near miss with a forklift. The person backing up almost runs into another person, which was not looking in the light of the blue lights. So it's going to pick this up, create a near miss report, and then you can either counsel the drivers, talk about what we do to make difference, maybe put a stop sign, maybe put mirrors up on the ceiling, maybe have something else to go through it. You can put collision alarms like you have in your car. These are all different things, but this is an example of AI watching either people lift improperly, forklifts being driven improperly, or so you can use it as a positive. Every time I look at Jose, he's doing it right. 100% no mistakes. That's data that you're going to get from AI. Okay, allows predictive information. The answer is C. Electrical fundamentals. And again, this is again, we're going to get the safety fundamentals in this area. And you know, I want to say out of the 50 questions, there's going to be safety 101, electrical, confined space, that kind of issue, and then management related and incident related. So they're going to open up a 480 volt panel over here, wearing only safety glasses and cotton clothing. What is the main hazard of concern? I'm telling you, I see this a lot, and it's dangerous. Is it electrical shock from indirect contact? Overhead tripping of the upstream fuse? C, arc flash capable of causing severe burns? D, low voltage power drop? And everybody's right. It is C, arc flash capable of causing severe burns. Again, NFPA 70E requires ARC-rated personal protective equipment. You should take an online class or something to know a little bit about 70E. You're not going to get anybody, you know, like 5 of the questions like that, but you're going to get a couple of them. Maybe 1 NFPA-E, 1 question on ground fault, circuit interrupters and stuff. And another one, electrical worker's going to attempt to bypass a broken resistor in a 120 volt system, causing an unintended surge. Remember, resistance impedes the current flow. When you take it away and we just wire directly through it and there's no resistance, it's going to be a current surge. So based on Ohm's law, voltage is equal to current times resistance. You got to know what those V and I are, because they're not going to explain them on the test. You're expected to know Ohm's law. What happens if the current resistance is removed? So we take out the resistor that was here or through the conduit, and now we just wired it, bypassed it. Does the current increase, the voltage increase, the power decrease, or D, the system becomes grounded? Very good. Current does increase. A is the answer. So remember, we take away resistance. All we're going to do is, the resistance is 0. It's going to be almost infinite current, but that's not true. There'll be some resistance to the copper wire. Maintenance tech is going to plug a portable tool in an outdoor outlet without a GFCI. This is what they call relocatable power tap. This is an outdoor outlet. Okay. What's the most likely electrical hazard being introduced? A, overvoltage. B, ground fault shock risk. C, static electricity accumulation. D, transformer failure. And very good, because we're going to put a GFCI, which is a ground fault circuit interrupter. So you know when they tell you that in a question, you have a ground fault is what they're going to say is the hazard. You can create a high amount of current being drawn and melt that power trap, which has happened numerous times. That is actually OSHA's #2 most cited, or excuse me, daisy chaining these power taps, putting one into another, is the #1 OSHA violation last year for electrical. So, okay, facilitation of an incident investigation. You notice the incident investigation team is skipping steps, like in the fishbone: people, materials, methods, machine, environment, and measurement. And they're just focusing really kind of on corrective actions without really doing the root cause analysis. So what's the most effective facilitation action? Allow them to proceed since action is being taken. Document your concerns separately, but say nothing during the meeting. Remind the team of the structured process. Encourage full root cause evaluation. D, end the meeting and take over the investigation yourself. And the answer is C. You're going to remind the team of the structured process and encourage full root cause evaluation. Again, trying to keep them on track. Because, you know, sometimes it's simple, but we go through all the factors. If we're going to do a fishbone, we do it right. And part of the thing is going through the process. And we do what we call brainstorming. Brainstorming is we're all going to think of what the environment did that could contribute to the accident. There's no right or wrong. We're going to write them down, and then we go through all 6 of these legs, and then we come back and we kind of focus on it. It just teaches them the discipline to do it right instead of just being tunnel vision and focus on one item when it could be a lot of other items. Drone safety, brand new. Your supervisor is going to facilitate a pre-flight risk assessment for drones near a high voltage substation like shown in the photo. What should be the top safety concern? GPS signal strength. B, battery charge level. C, electromagnetic interference from the substation. Operator comfort with the drone controls. These are all good questions. This is kind of like you got 4 good ones and you got to really pick the best answer. And it is electromagnetic interference. Because remember, if you have high voltage, 100,000 volts, and that's going to induce current, and it could affect the circuitry of the drone and cause it to possibly just drop out of the air. So that's going to be an issue to go through it. You're going to, most people are going to probably get 1 drone question. I mean, it's not going to be like 5 of them. I'm sure the data bank of drone questions is probably less than 50 right now. But it will increase because we're seeing it in used in a lot of things. I watched Amazon deliver packages with drones, and you don't, the safety people are ahead of this. They're actually working about, what are the risk assessments of bringing in the drone in there. But holy smokes, if you have a high traffic area, no parking, these drones are nice for small little objects that are 5 kilograms or less, because that's a lot of the product. 95% of the products they're delivering are not usually a heavy item, and the drones can lift quite a bit now. And then it returns to work. Personal protective equipment, most people will get these right. You're walking through the area, the worker's grinding without face shields, although they're wearing safety glasses. Now your policy says you're going to wear safety. What should your first step be? Okay. A, issue a citation to the supervisor immediately. B, review the hazard assessment risk task-specific PPE requirement. C, order face shields and require to use next week. D, assume safety glasses are sufficient if no injuries have occurred. So there it is, hazard assessment. I don't want to say 80% of the time you see the word hazard assessment, assess the hazard, that's probably going to be the answer, but it seems to be a very strong correlation when they talk about first step, So formal hazard, you talk about it. Well, if you wear regular safety glasses, and I just put on my glasses, it goes right over the thing. I have people get the particle in the eye, and then that costs, $10,000 to, take it out, and if it's embedded or scratches the cornea, then we got a lot more money. Process Safety Management, called PSM. You're expected to know what the PSM means. That means there's a whole standard in OSHA that deals with chemical safety where high hazard toxic concentrations of chemicals could result in catastrophic events like the Phillips 76 explosion, the BP explosion in 2005, and so on. The Chemical Safety Board at CSB.gov will have several accidents that you can read about. So you're going to go out and replace this pump right in the middle of this photo with a similar model from a different manufacturer. Maybe go get a German model. The pressure rating and flow ratings are slightly different. What's the most appropriate step under PSM? This topic is starting to come up 1, 2, or 3 questions on the test. No action is required since a similar pump. Proceed with installation if maintenance agrees. Initiate a management change process and assess the safety implications. D, document the change after installation is complete. And everybody got it. It is C, management of change. Because if we put in a pump with, let's say, 40 psi more, maybe the downstream pipes and the equipment can't handle it and they will bust and rupture. So that's what a management change would look at. Is it able to handle the flow or the thickness of the liquids? These are things that somebody has to go through. And any change should be reviewed under the Management of Change, MOC, if it could affect process safety. It's a good thing for any industry. If you're going to go out there and buy something that's going to be bigger and better or smaller, then somebody should really just look at it and see if it's good. Driver safety. This is a little bit about it has been in there for what they call fleet safety. But now they're starting to get into not necessarily the fleet part of it. They're looking at personal driving. So delivery driver is working 12-hour shifts, including overtime, and scheduled to drive again early next morning. What's the best risk control measure as a safety professional? During the holidays, back to school, in like Amazon Prime days, they are really swamped with packages to be delivered. So ask the driver to take caffeine and proceed. Encourage the driver to get extra rest during delivery stops. C, adjust the schedules to ensure compliance with rest period guidelines. D, provide hazard bonuses for longer shifts. So one of the things I tell people, if you don't get 4 hours of sleep for 2 weeks, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things. Then there's people like this guy. He's driving on the shoulder road in a road that's not empty. I'm on the slowest lane, and he's passing me on the shoulder at 100 miles an hour. That's not this. That's not a tiredness. That's just recklessness and taking a really unsafe risk. So the answer is C, adjust the schedule. Try to go through it. This has to be done because we found out, where people work these incredible amount of hours at data centers, at chemical plant turnarounds. They get tired, they make mistakes. I invested a case at Quantum Chemical in 1989 where they were tired. They were working 80, 90, 100 hours a week for months, 3-4 months, and instead of turning the valve on automatically, slowly going from 10% open to 100% open, the manager just hit the valve at 100% open, and it opened and it sent 300 psi downstream, and when it hit the heat exchanger, the force was so loud it blew up, and of course it was a flammable liquid in it, and it killed 2 people and 18 people got third-degree burns. Why? Because they were tired. And that's why I tell people, ideally 7/10 is perfect if you're going to have to absolutely do it. You start pushing 84 hours a week, 100 hours a week, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things you never thought you would say. Compressed gas tube. You're going to roll the cylinder. Here's the gas cylinder with the valve cap on it. You're going to roll it on or without the valve cap on the floor. Kind of like, a rolling pin. What's the hazard? Cylinder may develop a slow leak. B, labeling could become smudged. C, the valve could shear off, turning the cylinder into a missile. D, the regulator may rust from friction. And it is C. If you take the valve off, there are videos, particularly Mythbusters, who did an episode where they cut it off. It flew like a missile and went through a concrete block wall. So a cylinder without protective caps, high risk if it's damaged. So when it's done, regulators are removed, you put the valve cap on. Easy prevention. Pressure vessel safety. This is one of the things that they're looking at, I think, because there's been a history of large events that have caused catastrophic consequences of multiple dead. They're adding a little bit more to make sure people at least know something about this area. So pressure vessel safety is in the Process Safety Management Standard of OSHA 1910.119. Contractor is going to install a small pressure vessel. Here's our pressure vessel. You can call it small or large, but the nameplate is missing, no documentation is provided. What should you do as a safety professional? Prove the installation as a vessel looks new. This was a new vessel within less than a year of service. Ask the contractor to apply a new generic label. Reject the installation until the manufacturer certification and nameplate are verified. D, allow temporary use and schedule a verification audit. One of the other tricks in the test, if you got a long question and you have a long answer, it's going to be right a lot of the times. Just something if you just say, because they're going to explain. It takes longer to explain the right answer than not to explain the answer not right. This one is C. Reject the installation because this didn't have what they call ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers U1 report. This vessel was never tested, never made to handle 10,000 psi, and it blew up. And part of the plant flew about half a mile and killed the driver at a parking lot at an Oasis. And it's just incredible. And of course, the company just left and went overseas, never came back. And but it was they were making crystals. But it's called NDK Crystals up in Belvedere, Illinois, and there's a report on that, and that's another process safety one. So ASME, vessels have to have permanent name tags. So they're always going to look for it if you're doing an inspection, you want to verify it. And one of the things that happens, if you were like at Saudi Aramco, you got 10,000 plus vessels. Someone's got to have some kind of documentation that these vessels can handle the pressure. Some engineering service or whoever designed it, they have to have this. Same thing, if you're in India and you got Union Carbide or some other company, you need to make sure that this is there because these vessels can explode and rupture. Same for the piping. Slip, trips, and falls. This is a lot of accidents, and it shouldn't be a lot of accidents. Employee's carrying a laptop and coffee in both hands, coming down the stairs, breaks his leg. The incident reports the stair tread was intact. Yeah, that stair is in perfect condition. What was the most effective corrective action? Redesign the stair treads with brighter colors, prohibit the stairwell during work hours, train the staff on proper stair use, including handrails. This is the handrail. Keeping one hand free, require everyone to carry fewer items. So kind of like two good answers, and the answer is C. Train the staff on proper stair use using handrails, keeping one hand free. I have 2024 5 stair desks. All of them didn't use the handrail. All of them over 50. One of the things I'm finding out is if you're young, like you're 20 years old and you trip and fall, you're like rubber. When you're older, at 50 and older, bones break. And that's one of the things, unfortunately, that we're having. So I have to tell people, we got DO policy how to climb stairs. And they're like, come on, John, we don't need a policy on how to climb stairs. I said, I got a lot of desks. You do need a policy. You need to cover at one time something with everybody in the facility. We are not going to walk and talk and carry stairs because you can't do it. Because your traction, and most people, it's the cell phone. It's not coffee and a computer. So we tell people, you're always going to use the handrail when you descend a stair. Okay, ergonomics. This is a tough area, and they're going to go into the progression of ergo is that you're going to develop the program, identify the risk factors, and then apply the solutions. And then they're going to introduce new concepts in ergonomics, REBA and RULA, and we'll talk about it. Fitness to duty went to domain 6. Okay, so you might get one of these questions. A lot of the ergo is going to be much more basic. And again, this is going to be, like 10, 12 questions, and you have to know a little bit about it. So we're going to talk about REBA and RULA. REBA is rapid body assessment. That means you're looking at the whole body. It came out in 2000. Now, I've been doing ergonomics since the 80s, so I always kind of find it that this came out. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at the whole body task, and then you're going to use an assessment form or an iPad, which will have the assessment, or a phone app. And then you're going to give it a score from 1 to 15. Why 15? That's because these two guys made it, and the idea is it's higher risk. So if you're lifting 20-pound box from waist-high conveyor to the pallet, like we showed the previous photo, 5 lifts per minute, bending, twisting, coupling's good, you can grab it, you might score this anywhere on it. I used to do this without the table, but that's when you're telling me I'm lifting 20 pounds box on the floor and I'm bending and twisting, that's high risk. So it would be a REBA score of 8. What are you going to use? You're going to use like a form. They have several versions of this. And you're going to give numbers for the neck, the trunk, the legs, and you're going to total it up. You can spend a day on this whole REBA and RULA, but we're not going to do it. All you have to do is remember there's a score system. Higher the number, the more the risk. RULA is just for people that are going to just use their upper body, and it came out back in 1993. Again, OSHA is actually using this in the ergonomic citations. They want companies to sit there and do this as part of their assessments instead of trying to, you got a risk that you make and I have a risk. The idea is if we use that same form, we should be pretty close on our numbers, and that's the idea. It's used in offices, healthcare, assembly, again, static repetitive upper body. So that's these. The thing is, they may not give you what it means. You might have to know what those are. So it's just something else. Wow, it looks the same form except that it's all upper body. How far are we reaching? How many times we're reaching per minute or 2 minutes or whatever? How much are we bending the neck? How much are we bending the area? My rule of thumb is anytime you're bending the neck 30 degrees, 20 to 60 degrees, reaching out, fully, then you're going to have a problem. So let's go through the 3 ergo questions. Safety teams launching a new ergonomic initiative. What should be the first step? A, purchase ergonomic chairs for all the employees. B, conduct individual stretching sessions. C, perform a baseline job posture assessment. D, install vibration sensors on all tools. Here we're lifting 30-pound boxes on this. This was an injury every month at this big, huge billion-dollar company. And I was like, this is crazy. Why would you even do this? You do assessment, you're going to get it. The answer is going to be C. When I look at these questions and I see the word assessment, I want to say about 80% of the time that's going to be the right answer. Always should start with a systematic assessment. The REBA question. In an office ergonomic evaluation using REBA, the final score is 11. What does it indicate? No action, acceptable posture, posture requires further observation, D, immediate investigation and change is required. So here we are, we're trying to lift this heavy package and put it into the rack. Well, that's going to be a problem. So we want to definitely do D. A change is required. Again, it's not rated the highest, but it's pretty high risk. Safety professionals asked to take an ergonomic assessment. Here we have 2 people sitting in the chairs all day long. And one of the things about chairs, this is kind of like I call a stool. Now there's these little levers, you can adjust the height, but if the desk is up here and you're putting on like screws onto an object or something that's small, it's going to be a lot of hand and manual repetition. So they're doing this for moderate force, 6 hours a day. It involves minimal lower body movement because they're sitting. What ergo tool is most appropriate for this evaluation? The REBA, NIOSH lifting equation, the RULA, or the Snook tables? And the answer is C, because it's the rapid body system. I think at first you're going to get, what is it? Because it's not used very often. If you go to like 100 facilities that are over 500 people, you're not going to see this done. You know, it's not, I would say it's done in maybe 1 out of every 1,000 places. It's not common. People look at the hazards, assess the risk, and go that way. But in a bigger corporation, like a billion-dollar corporation, they may try to do this with the number systems on the REBA and RULA. Fire prevention and protection. This, surprisingly, is a lower scoring area, and they're going to add electrical fire issues, combustible dust, fire systems. So, again, you know, the idea is each of these domains, you want to get at least, 60% on it. And if you take assessments or you do these, assessments, I always tell people, you get the Pocket Prep for $20, you get 1,000 ASP questions, 1,000 CSP questions. The domains are like 85% similar. You're going to get fire and CSP, you're going to get risk and CSP, you're going to get Ergo. You can use both those 2,000 questions, and we got 2,000 questions in the BCSP study group file tab for CSP, and just, if you're ASP, you can do them. Obviously you won't have environmental as a major component of this, but you can skip that and work on the other ones. So let's get into it. What are the types of fire extinguishers? We got a grease fire. Is that A, B is C, C answer is K, or D, B? So A, B, C, or K. And K means kitchen fire. It's going to be a kind of like a foam type of system that sits on top of the grease. But you get the fire, you got to shut off the fryer. You can't, first rule, kill the power, shut it off, and then the grease will eventually cool down too. It'll be a lot of smoke. Fire signage labels. You are expected to know the NFPA diamond. So we got a red 4, a blue 1, a yellow 2. Which is the best interpretation for the fire part of it, the 4? Materials mildly flammable, A. B. Post signage prohibiting open flames. C. Treat the area as high fire hazard zone requiring Class 1 Division 1 classification. D. The signage must be replaced since 701 is no longer applicable on a HAZCOM. And the answer is C. They can use alternative labeling systems under GHS or HAZCOM. But this is very flammable. This is your ethers. This is stuff that ignites at room temperature. More flammable than gasoline. NFPA 0 is not a hazard. 4 is the highest hazard. And GHS 1 is the greatest hazard. So I kind of like had an argument with NFPA. I says, why don't we just change the numbers? No, everybody's been using it for 100 years. We don't want to. Oh my God. Just change the numbers. Then we can all kind of like be on the same page. But they don't want to do it. Not a big deal to label them over. Electrical, motor control center. This is what a motor control center, some of them are going to be like two of these wide, and it's just a lot of electrical components for a big, huge machine. They're going to label the arc flash boundary at 36 based on a calculation. It's going to create an incident energy of 7.8 calories. What's the minimum PPE required to do voltage testing? So what kind of equipment should they be wearing? Cotton long sleeve safety glasses like he's doing. B, face shield 00 gloves, arc rated balaclava. C, arc rated clothing with a minimum rating of 8 calories and rubber gloves for leather protectors. D, category arc suit, category 4 arc suit with minimum 40 cal protection. This is a tough question, The answer is 8 calories because it goes from 8 calories. So 480, you just got to have 8 calories. If it's got higher incident rate, then you go to get something that's more than that. You can get 20 calorie, 40 calorie suits, and they've even got suits even higher than that now. But that's what you would learn in NFPA 70E training. So the answer was C. Combustible dust. During the facility, you'll notice fine levels of dust. In fact, so much dust you can write the word dust on it, which is what OSHA tells the compliance officers to do. What's your best course of action? Ignore it if no incidents have occurred. B, schedule cleaning during the next regular housekeeping cycle. C, notify management, begin hazard assessment of the combustible dust. D, only sample dust if layers exceed 1/8 of an inch. The courts have ruled if you could write the word dust, you're over 1/8 of an inch, usually. And again, word hazard assessment. So again, NFPA 660 is new last year, so it combines the metal, the food, and the wood dust standards all into one. But it is an important standard. That standard requires assessing the risk of the dust in your facility if you have combustible dust and doing a formal risk assessment of that area, or a dust hazard analysis. Wow. All these food companies, like, how do you do a dust hazard analysis? Just take out the word dust and put job hazard analysis. Just kind of deal with all the hazards that the dust could be into, how often you're going to clean it, because cleaning is something you have to do. Fire system. Your company installs a new server. Okay, here's our data center about 4 years ago with all our big NVIDIA chips in it, and seeks a fire suppression system that won't damage electronics. Which option is the most suitable? Dry chemical, A. B. Pre-action sprinkler system. C. Wet chemical system. D. Clean agent system. So I get to go to the Microsoft and the Meta data centers where they're spending billions of dollars building these things. They're not using water, I can tell you that. It's going to be the clean agent system. In the old days we had halon, then it became a danger to the ozone, but now they've got FM200 and Novec 1230. It's going to displace the heat, suppress the fire without residue. You have to remember, I call these $1 million refrigerators of data chips. You can't ruin it. I mean, we got billions of dollars in some of these data centers. The one in Wisconsin got billions of dollars. You put the dry chem, it's going to adhere to every electrical component and ruin it. So, wet chem means it's going to have electricity on the circuits that have electricity. That's not good for it. Pre-action means it's not going to do anything, and then it's going to send water. Well, that's not good. So clean action is what they want to go through. And this is where people, there's so much money in this. This is stuff. And if you haven't ever heard of these, then go look it up, because this is something you're going to have to know, the term clean agent. Emergency preparedness. This is one of the two top areas. Training and emergency preparedness are the two lowest scoring areas in the ASP when I look at it. You got to know the incident command system. Go watch the video on YouTube, and then maybe take a class on it online. They got a lot of online classes on it. Could be very boring online. But it's going to include emergency planning, disaster recovery, workplace violence, lone worker. Now, they added workplace violence a couple years ago in this test, and you might get 1 or 2, 3 maybe. Lone workers, brand new. But we'll go through each of them. We got a hurricane coming in to hit our area, or a big lit rainstorm. What are you going to do as part of the emergency plan up? Board up the windows, secure the furniture. B, stock up the non-perishable food and water. C, review your evacuation route and emergency shelter options. D, wait for further instructions. There you are. You're going to look at it. Very good. It's going to be C. We're going to look at the area. We have to figure out what the evacuation routes are. Are we able to get out there? Because roads like Florida, I-95 is just completely packed. You can't even drive on it. And you have to plan that. If I tell people to 24 hours they got to go, that road might not even let them out in 24 hours. It's just nonstop. So you're going to have to think about what you're going to go through, and some people, they're going to ride it out, which is not good, but it could happen. So these are things that you have to think about in your emergency planning. Disaster recovery, we got an oil spill, we got a train rollover like we had at Palestine in Ohio. What are we going to do? Wait for emergency service to restore power, develop a business continuity plan with backup sites. C, notify employees about past disasters. D, repair equipment after each disaster. And the answer is not when you live in Florida. Okay. I just watch I-95. That's all I'm thinking, man, that's a long day to sit in traffic, and if you don't have gas, you might be running out of gas, So you're going to set up alternative site. Business continuity questions are always going to be on these tests now. The idea is that we got the flood, the building is flooded, what are we going to do? Are we just going to say, oh, the company's gone because we didn't plan for an alternative location? Usually today, unless you're doing manufacturing, you're doing business, banking and stuff, you can do things at alternative locations if you've planned for this. Workplace violence is 1, 2, or 3 questions. Warehouse worker receives threatening text messages like this. I've been calling you, refuse to pick up your call. I want all your information, and when you stay with us, I promise you I'll blank, 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 and basically hurt you. So what action should the employer take? Because this is real life. Change the worker schedule to do nothing more. B, encourage the worker to handle it privately. C, notify security, develop a response plan, involve local law enforcement. D, fire an employee. Eliminate the risk. Bad choice there. Obviously, develop a response plan. C, notify local enforcement. I always tell people, if they make a threat to your body, then that's illegal. That's they're committing a threat of violence to you, and that should be reported. And that's a serious thing. No such thing as a joke violence text, as I call it. And we have it from domestic situations to, you owe me money, or other issues. Yes, you could have an active shooter one too. That's workplace violence could get into quite a lot of different topics. So. And then what administrative control working for lone workers? He's a cell-phone worker. He's going to put a dish up there. He fell. You're up 120 feet in Chicago, and you dropped your cell phone when you fell. Now what? What are you going to do? Because I have had people literally just hang and have the blood stop their circulation, which they call orthostatic intolerance, and die or get permanently brain damage. So hire only physical fit worker. Well, he's definitely physical fit. B, post safety posters. C, implement a check-in, check-out system with escalation protocol. D, have a worker sign liability waivers before going along. There's only one good answer on this one, so it is C. Implement a check-in, check-out. I tell people, you got about 15 minutes to rescue him, because we have deaths in hanging at 30 minutes. So you should be checking in every 15 minutes just to say, hey, Hal, how's it going? It's going good. It sounds crazy, but remember, they're working by themselves. And you don't get a response. You have a plan. We're going to call the local person, going to go drive out there, or, the local sheriff or police or somebody else is going to check on them, because we don't want to have that worker just hanging there. Another one, a field tech decided to work in a remote area with poor cell reception. Here he is in the middle of a forest in an area by himself. What's the best safety control measure to implement? Ask the worker to send a text when he arrives. B, equip the worker with a monitored satellite communication device. C, have him call the office before and after the job. D, rely on the worker's judgment to call. Okay, this one is going to be B. You can watch him. You can go in there. You can go through it. It's kind of scary that you can watch somebody where they're at on their cell phone if you have the permissions. You got a company cell phone. They can do this wearable technology where they can see you and it could send an alarm. This person hasn't moved in 10 minutes, and all of a sudden it notifies you, and then you're going to say, hey, Marta, where are you at? You haven't moved in 10 minutes. Are you okay? Oh, I'm just sitting down eating lunch. That's fine, but that's what it can do. So the answer would be equip the worker with monitoring. Answer is B. Then the occupational health and science. This is actually people do good on the chemistry, anatomy, worker health, fitness to duties. Kind of like was never really a lot of questions. If you got one, it was amazing. But when I see it highlighted, it's probably going to get at least one or two now. And then they're going to focus on hazard assessment. A lot about sampling lately, seems like, and then radiation. So we already did radiation. It's kind of like in two spots. So during a routine lab inspection, the safety professional observes unlabeled containers just like this with unknown chemical substances. What's the appropriate medium of action? Seal and store the containers in a flammable cabinet. B, run a quick pH test on all the contents. D, isolate the containers and initiate a hazardous material identification process. D, disposable contents down the drain per local procedures. Pretty easy, one answer for sure. Because it may not be acid, it may not be solvents, it could be acid. And you have to be treated as hazard until properly identified. So someone's got to put a label and the pictograms, or hazard warning, the NFPA diamond. So this should say toluene, flammable, NFPA diamond, or you're going to put the fire pictogram and a health pictogram if it's applicable, whatever one of the 9 pictograms are. You might have 5. I've seen labels with 5 of them on there. Human anatomy. Wow, this is a course unto itself. Worker reports numbness and tingling in hands. Now, these issues are usually going to be related to the bones or a disease that's going to affect the body. What nerve is being compressed? The ulnar, the radial nerve, the median nerve, or D, the sciatica nerve. Tingling in the hands. Well, everybody got that one. Carpal tunnel is going to be the median nerve. It runs through the wrist, and if this ligament is pushing on it, you're going to get numbness and pain. And if you don't deal with it, you might have to have surgery to cut the ligament itself. And there's a lot of new technology in how to do this one, but that's a sign of it, you know. And I always tell people, you can stretch that ligament by just taking your middle and your ring finger and hold it for 30 seconds twice a day, and you're stretching this median nerve, and I mean the carpal tunnel ligament. Worker in a distribution center gained a significant weight over the past years, reporting frequent joint pain. They're starting to ask about health and wellness and worker health. What should the wellness program prioritize? Training on fall protection, B, anti-fatigue mats, C, nutrition and physical activity programs, D, eye strain. This one's easy, and it could be harder. You know, they could talk about other things, but the idea is that, you know, part of the wellness is to try to encourage people to eat better, and I like safety talks on, you know, different issues, including mental stress too. So the answer was C. Fitness for duty. Technicians are going to return to work after surgery and since they feel fine, what should the employer allow to be doing? So he had surgery. Part of his job is to put material on the pallet. His surgery was in his lower back. Accept his worker's word he's good and resume full duties. B, request a medical clearance for a healthcare provider. C, monitor performance for a few hours. D, let them work with a partner for safety. Very good. It is B, request medical clearance from a healthcare provider, because got to be good. I mean, you know, we run into this a lot of times. You know, we just had, I just ran into yesterday. They had a broken bone. They were off for 3 days, you know, and then they came back with restrictions, but the job doesn't have restrictions. So we looked at it and we said, can they do this job? And they said, fine. So that's getting clearance. It's easy to get to the clinic. I always tell people it's like under $150 to go get clearance to go get this worker. You can work with a cast on your arm. I have numerous people work with a cast. During the morning briefing, the crew member is slurring speeches, stumbling slightly. What's the appropriate action? So he's slurring, he's bending over just to catch his breath. Ignore it until someone's injured. B, allow him to work under observation. C, send him home immediately without documentation. D, remove him from duty and initiate a impairment protocol. Everybody gets that one right away. And this is called impairment testing or protocol. They have it for drivers in the United States under Department of Transportation. But I tell people you have to have a policy, because I have had probably 70% of the injuries in the last, or not injuries, but 70% of the people we see that are impaired have bad drug interactions. You know, people are taking this medicine and it's causing them to black out, stumble. I mean, it's just amazing. Some of this new medicine just doesn't go well with people. So reasonable suspicion, that's it. Usually 2 managers in most of my company's policies, because DOT does 2 managers. Train people how to do it, and then send them to the clinic and see it. And don't let them drive their car if you think they're impaired, right? Get an Uber or a taxi or company vehicle and take them. But it is serious, because you know we've had people just, they're found unconscious, and you're thinking, what is, could be low blood sugar from diabetes. You know, I mean, I've seen everything. So exposure assessment, 46B, because I didn't number it right. Worker exposed to lead on a regular basis, so he's going to scrape off the lead paint on this bridge. What's the following occupational health monitoring that's got to be done? Chest x-ray, B, daily blood pressure tests, C, blood lead testing, D, ergonomic workstation assessment. And the answer is C, periodic blood level testing, because under the lead standard, you get 50 micrograms per deciliter for blood leads, and if you have too much of it, it's going to cause problems, and then they might have to remove you and pay you full salary while you sit at home and try to get rid of the lead through natural process of just taking time. Biological hazards. We're starting to see a little increase on biological questions. It used to be you might get 1. Now I think you're going to get 1 or 2 for sure. So during a renovation project in an old hospital wing like this is actually the case that caused 17 deaths. The workers reported a flu-like symptoms and respiratory irritation. What biological hazard should be suspected? Formaldehyde, Legionella, silica dust, or lead paint chips? This has killed 17 people in Quincy nursing home a few years ago. I see it a lot more often. You know, even General Motors had it at one of their water processes in Michigan. It's going to be Legionella. You have an area of an old wing and the water's been stagnant in the pipes. That Legionella can breed, and when you aspirate the water, because you have now these electronic touch faucets, it aspirates and the Legionella is in the air and it's contagious. So that's something you would have to look at. I mean, like I said, started in the 70s with the the military people at a hotel, the Legionnaires, American Legion, and it killed a few of those. And I've seen it in hot tubs. You know, the water is just contaminated with Legionella bacteria. Water coolers too, very good. Another biological, because I think you're going to get a lot of these questions on diseases and things like that. Which control measure is most effective reducing exposure to tuberculosis? Now, this is a sanitarium in the 20s, in the 1910s. In Chicago, we had 5,000 people die in 1 year. You think Chicago, a lot smaller back then. People got scared. They grabbed you and put you in a sanitarium. Most of them were kids, you know. This is where you were going to live until you got better, which you never did. So what were you going to require? Face masks, hazard signs, engineering controls like negative pressure rooms, D, routine fire drills. Very good. Engineering controls like negative pressure rooms. In 1990s, when I was with OSHA, industrial hygienist Caroline, she cited the first requirement for negative pressure TB rooms. You'll never lose a case like she didn't lose the case. It never actually went to trial. She showed hospitals that had negative pressure rooms for tuberculosis, because you can't have the TB virus coming down the hallway with positive air conditioning. You have to have a negative pressure. It has to have filters, and when you go into it, that's how you control the bacteria from spreading from one part to another. So, you know, it's not like it's snap your fingers and $500. It's going to be $50,000 plus to make a negative pressure room, and if you got to make 2 or 3 of these, that's some money the hospital has to spend. But we're ready to go to court. You know, she had everything documented, and it's tough. You cannot be, you know, a $100 million hospital with other hospitals doing it, and you say, I can't afford it. It's just not. 25 years. So it does start on September 1st, yes. And again, a lot of people are taking it beforehand. And again, what happens is you take it now, and then the CSP's already started in August 1st, and you know, well, it's just going to be in that timing. You can't get in there and do the test in, you know, a week. All right, I appreciate everybody coming in, and we'll get out of here. And I will put in the lockout next. That's the next thing to do. I had, you know, this took like 16 hours to do with everybody. So we'll talk to you later, and we'll have it up today. Thank you.